Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. Follow me on Twitter at Javapeno. That's spelled Javiipeno, or at LO_Padres. Or you can go check out Just Baseball, which is a really cool website that is relevant also on today's episode. Very relevant on today's episode. You could go check out the Locked On Padres on YouTube, all that stuff. I write for Just Baseball sometimes. And for today's episode, we are going to be recapping the end of this Reds Padres series that gave us actually a decent amount to talk about. Last time, I talked with Jeff Carr of Locked On Reds. But now, for the first time, I am bringing on a very good friend of mine. You might know him from Just Baseball for a bunch of articles that he writes over there, including stuff about the Oakland A's every now and then. But he is primarily a Cincinnati Reds truther fan since the early days, since before 2001, A Space Odyssey. This man has been following this team forever. A good friend of mine who also hosts the Just Fantasy show over at Just Baseball, Mr. Clay Snowden. Sir, welcome to Locked On Padres. How are you doing?
Wow, what an intro. And, I actually used to technically write for Locked On Reds. Jeff has his own Locked On Reds website, and that's how I started writing. So I'm very familiar with the Locked On network. Wearing my Padres quarter zip today due to the fact that the Reds got owned by them today. So I figured I would go ahead and do this. But fun series. I know that we're breaking it down, but looking forward to it.
Absolutely, man. And it's funny because the Reds, and I talked about this with Jeff, I find to be, and this could be granted, me just being a big baseball nerd, but certainly there's a lot of intrigue over on that team. On top, and this isn't just a current roster situation either, with their prospects, with their farm, unlike say some other teams that traded everything and didn't get the same level of return. I think the Reds have like a lot of interesting players, and one of them did really well against the Padres in this series, and we're going to talk about him. But I just, there's a lot of teams that are bad out there that don't have a direction. The Reds are bad, but at least they have a direction. And I think that, it's at least cool to play them, even if there was some disappointing moments for the Padres in this series.
And what we saw in 2019 for the Reds was the most spending in free agency that they've ever had. Nick Castellanos came in, Wade Miley, Mike Moustakas, the ghost of Mike Moustakas, as I like to say. Yeah. And they were really just trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark. Great American Ballpark gives up a lot of home runs. That was their strategy. They had no defense at all, and it just did not work out. They traded those guys off, got a bunch of prospects in return, a bunch of money freed up after this season. They have only one contract technically guaranteed on the books, and that's the Hunter Green extension, which they just signed. But anyone that watched this series saw the Reds are not home run hitters. They've kind of transitioned into more of the small ball and bought into that. And I'm sure that you all saw, Tuesday night, TJ Friedl 3-hit game. That guy's the ultimate, I feel like anyone that watches TJ Friedl, a different team's fan, will like him. You don't know who the hell he is. And then he comes and plays your team, and you're like, man, I like this guy. He's a grinder. Same with Jake Fraley, who had a couple of good hits. Javi, I bet you and other Padres fans kind of like Jake Fraley and TJ Friedl.
I mean, he robbed us just a tad bit in this this series. He had some diving catches that was, it happens. It's okay. We have our own center fielder who makes some diving catches and did one in this series. I believe it was the first game, which is really great, in Trent Grisham. But yeah, man, I mean, the Reds have had a very odd trajectory over the past few years, but it hasn't been nearly as bad as I think other teams. One that's in our division, the Rockies, and I think before we get into kind of the good stuff for Padres fans who are listening to this podcast, I want to talk about some of the bad stuff for the Padres, and that was the Game 2 loss. And the reason I want to talk about that is because it's easy for me to sit here and complain about the offense. And believe me, I will. I got beef. I already tweeted out what happened in the bottom of the 10th in the Tuesday game. But Graham Ashcraft, a pitcher that probably nobody who's a Padres fan has heard of for the most part, and probably not general baseball fans either for the most part, because that's just where the Reds are right now. But he looks pretty good. What can you tell us about Graham Ashcraft? Is he actually that good? Is it just an ERA thing that's kind of a inflated thing? Or did the Padres really not hit him well? Or is he actually just kind of legitimately good pitcher that it shouldn't surprise Padres fans as much that they weren't able to hit him?
Yeah, former 6th round pick Graham Ashcraft. He was one of those players that was drafted and then, you know, 2019, I believe, then COVID year, so you didn't see him for a year. And he was always in the shadow of Lodolo and Green.
Mhm,
And he's a damn good pitcher. He really is. And you'll see that throughout when you watch him. He doesn't strike many guys out,
mhm.
but he has the movement on his pitches that is so difficult to square up. Over a 55% ground ball rate throughout the minors, about that in the majors as well. It's just really hard to square this guy up and make solid contact.
Mhm.
So when you watch him pitch and you saw a swing, I think it was Trent Grissom on Tuesday night that it just about hit him and he
Mm,
swung at it because the movement
mhm.
is that crazy. He really is a great pitcher. Right now, Graham Ashcraft has the highest baseball reference WAR in the entire National League. Second place is Acuna. That's how good Graham Ashcraft has actually been. And he is that legit talent. He has this like gyro fastball cutter pitch that's goes about 99 miles per hour, and it's just really hard to make good contact on. So yeah, only 3 strikeouts in 6 innings of 1 run ball, but the crazy movement, man, it's tough.
It's very interesting, and you know, especially in today's game, you're always looking for the crazy strikeout guys. Your Garrett Coles, your Corbin Burns, your, you know, for the Padres' perspective, your you Darvishes every now and then. But yeah, so that was my kind of perspective where I was like, all right, like in fairness, this is a good pitcher. I like to give other teams props. It's so easy to just complain about the Padres' offense and oh, they have the 4 MVPs. You should never only get 1 run. But in fairness, this is a really good pitcher. And you mentioned O'Donnell and Green. That's kind of been like the calling card for the team. And I know that Hunter Green just got extended, and he's like he kind of generates the headlines. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he's throwing 100 every single
Second
pitch.
overall pick. Yeah.
Yeah, everything there. But it's interesting that you know you have Lodolo who came up at the end of last year. We didn't see him in this series, but you know he comes up. He was really good last year towards the end of the season. Definitely racking up the strikeouts, and I think that that's impressive for any Reds pitcher, especially given the Great American Ballpark stuff being one of the, if not the most hitter friendly venue. And then you've got this Ashcraft guy that's just in the background being like, hey, you know, just kind of being
Yeah.
a Kyle Hendricks. I know he's not good anymore, but when he was good, that type of pitcher who's just going to make people make mistakes and do what Grisham did.
Yeah. And Tuesday night was probably frustrating for Padres fans. They left 19 on base,
Yeah.
but I don't know if Padres fans understand how, excuse me. Whoa. I don't know if Padres fans understand the bullpen pieces from the Reds that night. The
Mm-hmm.
bullpen did not allow a hit. Now, Lucas Sims is a legitimate bullpen piece, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pretty level-headed fan. I would tell you if they weren't good. Some of the pitchers you saw before, maybe like Derek Law, not exactly a great pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
Lucas Sims is legit, really good pitcher. He pitched in the 8th and the 9th inning. Alexis Diaz. Just look at his Savant page. All red, crazy movement as well with a fantastic fastball slider combo. And, he came in, believe he walked the first batter. It was an extra, sorry. And then he got Tatis, and then he got Machado, and then he got Soto looking on a ball that I thought was out of the strike zone.
Mm-hmm.
But, and especially if Soto watches it, it's out of the strike zone.
Mm-hmm.
But the Reds played their A game in terms of the pitching on Tuesday night. The
Mm-hmm.
offense wasn't very good, but hate to say it, neither was the Padres. And Javi,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that Austin Nola trade at this point? That trade, Ty France,
Hold
Andres
on a minute.
Munoz, Luis
Hold
Torrens, Taylor Trammell, every single one of those players could help the Padres right now.
Hold on. That is such an out. It's true. But you didn't have to say it. You know what I mean? Like that was mean.
He's
Like the
batting like
Stephen A.
150, man. I had to bring it up.
I know, but it's look, I know you bring up Osinola, who, doesn't do much in this game. He strikes out, he goes 0 for 3. Yeah, my thing with the Austin Nola is if not for the Padres former first baseman, he would have been talked about like that, I think. Now, granted, there's so many other factors to why Hosmer became so maligned, with personality and coverage and all that stuff and contract, but with Nola, no, it has been great, man. There is an alternate universe where the Padres had Ty France and they're just hanging out. I don't care who plays catcher, to be honest. And you saw by the time people are listening to this, yesterday's game, Brett Sullivan, the hero of the day, who's like the backup catcher for the team, who might at this point already have earned himself to be the primary catcher, especially with Luis Campusano on the IL. So we're gonna have to see how that transpires. But yeah, man, it's really rough. But for me, that first game, the way to sum it up for me is Ashcraft was great. You just talked about Sims was very helpful. But for me, first and second, and while it's baseball's a long season, I get that. But that is a really strong microcosm for what it's been like for Padres fans watching this team. It's against a not so great Reds team, against a reliever that most people haven't heard of, not even trying to insult the guy. And you've got first and second, nobody out. And the three best hitters you have, you get Tatis, you get Manny, not Bogarts because I think he was sitting that night, but and then you get Soto, and the runners don't even move up. That has happened while not in the exact same situation. So many times for the Padres this year, whether it be Machado, who hit into like 6 double plays so far this year. I think it's 5 or 6. You have Soto, who's hit into some untimely double plays. And Tatis just gets back. He doesn't do much there. It's just really frustrating because that's what was promised. That's what was expected, was these guys to come up clutch. You got first and second and 3 MVPs coming up. You should at least be able to drive one in. And they didn't even, aside from Machado, who did make some good contact on the ball, in that situation. That's just kind of been so far the story of the Padres offense. MVP players that have not played like MVPs, especially considering that the bottom of their lineup has some holes. So they need those guys to play like MVPs.
Yeah, and one last thing about Tuesday's game. The Reds were due. And you'll run into a game like that when you have 3 pitchers like the Reds having Lodolo, Green, and Ashcraft. One of them is going to win on occasion. But the Reds had lost 9 straight in San Diego. And being a Reds fan, staying up late, watching those games in heartbreak every single time for the past couple of years, it was just time. It was just due. I know the Padres left a lot on base, but it was just the Reds' night. In my opinion, they got a little bit lucky too.
Happens every now and then, guys. It just happens. But you gotta move on through life. You gotta recover from stuff like that. Before we continue talking, though, guys, about the rest of the series and hopefully some positive stuff on the Padres side of things, and definitely talking about Juan Soto. I know Clay wanted to talk about that. Just a quick second. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Folks, ladies and gentlemen, therapy is very important. It has helped me over the past year or so. It is important to not just, take some time for yourself, I think is very important. And never take a moment. Sometimes people don't take a moment, I should say, to think about themselves. They think about their work, they think about whatever they're doing, and they can suffer burnouts, which is something that I had last year, I had in college and all that stuff. And it's important to go out here and, get the help that you need. No jokes here. I usually do jokes during ad reads. Definitely not this time. If you're thinking of starting therapy, though, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapists, and you can switch therapists at any time with no additional charge. That's really cool. Find more balance with BetterHelp. And because you're listening to this show, guys, visit betterhelp.com/lockedonmlb today to get 10% off your first month. It's a very cool website. Always appreciate and respect any type of way that makes mental health coverage and care easily accessible for people, and BetterHelp helps you out with that. So remember, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonmlb. Go check that out, folks. Very, very cool. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Padres your first listen every day. Free and available on all platforms, including the Tube, including the YouTube. Be sure to subscribe on there for sure. Today, if you're watching on video, might not have the same pristine looking background as usual. Don't worry, there is reason behind that. It's okay. Sometimes these things must happen. I had to host this call myself. On my own Zoom thing. Long story, but don't worry, folks. Don't worry. The time will come. The night is darkest just before the dawn, some might say. Anyway, that was a long break. Clay, let's continue talking about this series, man. I think that, we talk about that Padres lineup, and, you do run into games like that. So while it's, again, I decried how annoying it was on Twitter for those 3 to go down, but it does happen. And I think that overall, though, the Padres offense has shown some signs of life. And part of this is, granted, a little bit inflated because of the Mexico City series. But even before that, and ever since Tatis got back, there has been a feeling like, all right, we're slowly recovering. It was almost like, like I don't even know what's a good analogy for it, but they've just been the starting off the gate, kind of like a Mario Kart thing. There you go. There's my analogy. When you hold the A button too long, when it says 3, 2, 1, and you just kind of like stumble or whatever, that's basically what happened to the Padres offense to begin the
Fishtailing.
year. Yeah, it happens every now and then. But Clay, I know you have been very interested in, because you also text me and make fun of him, Juan Soto, who has had not a disastrous start to the season, because still the data is still really good on him. He still hits the ball hard. And while Manny Machado, who also started off really roughly, Soto's walking ability is still there, basically in full force. So he's been bad by the astronomical standards, given everything they've given up for him and whatnot. Over his Padres tenure has not been great, but he has improved as of late, and he was really good overall in this series. And I could bring up the stats right now. In this series, he had a pretty good game, and in yesterday's game, he had a bases clearing double, which kind of put the game totally out of reach. Even if this isn't a strong Reds offense, it was still really good to see. And he drew a bunch of walks, 3 walks, and hold on, today's May 3rd, and 3 walks in the game as well. So he's been performing pretty well. What do you think, just from afar, though, because I know that you love covering stars. I know you're a host of a fantasy league that I am in and whatnot. So you're always up to date with the big superstars.
He's on my fantasy team, so I'm watching him extremely closely.
What's it been like, man?
I'm not that worried.
Mhm.
Right now, he's seeing a 4% increase in breaking balls.
Mhm.
That's the pitch he struggles the most with, a 171 average on breaking balls. He hit 160 last year off breaking balls. So I expect him to see more. A batter as good as Juan Soto, you have to find any little advantage you can. Breaking balls is that advantage. So he may not drive the ball out of the ballpark as much because he's not seeing as many fastballs. However, he still has a 57% hard hit rate, the highest of his career. The issue right now is the ground balls. He has a 58% ground ball rate. We know that's going to change to line drives. In my opinion, it's just a matter of time. When I would be concerned about Soto is if he was swinging and missing a bunch, if he no longer had great plate discipline. Like, those are the type of things with Juan Soto that sound the alarms. He's still walking at a high rate. He's still hitting the ball well, making great contact. I think it's a little bit of early season, just finding his groove. What better way to get right than to go to Mexico, right? Isn't that how everyone gets right? You just have a weekend in Mexico, and then you come back and you play the Cincinnati Reds. And he looked good today. 3 walks and that big 3 RBI or three run double. I'm in no way concerned about Juan Soto. I like to make fun of him because it just gives me something to text you about and, not exactly put you at ease, but, ruffle some feathers maybe. But yeah, Wednesday's game and Monday's game showed how dominant the Padres can be, especially when they're clicking. Monday's game, every single starter in the Padres lineup had a hit. Wednesday's game was dominant. And granted, Luis Sesso's on the mound for the Reds. He's been an automatic L. That guy stinks, man. He's not an MLB pitcher at this point. He's definitely not a starter. They moved him from the bullpen, but you know who I love is Kim. And that's my wife's favorite player.
Hey, the wife shout out. Let's go.
And he kills the Reds. In his career, his slash line is 333, 405, 788 slugging. That's 4 home runs and 37 at-bats against the Reds in his career. What a guy.
What a guy. What a guy, absolutely. He hits a 3-run bomb in the Monday game, which was rad. And I also will mention that Ha-Seong Kim's power has never really necessarily been a big thing. I was hopeful that he might show a little bit of an increase in turning those pulled balls into fly balls. He's good at it at Petco. He loves hitting it to that exact spot right there. But overall, I think he's just an average at bat, and obviously the value comes from his defense. But he's beat up the Reds. We've had a couple like lower tier Padres. Victor Caratini, dare I say, from a couple years ago, the Sea of San Diegans walk-off home run. A couple of weird players that do well against the Padres, or I'm sorry, against the Reds. And Kim has been a little bit one of those when you compare him to the rest of the lineup. Of course, I got so much love for Kim. Even if Padres Twitter every I'm going to say every other 5 days gets into a whole why do we have this guy on our team, trade him
I
kind of
have one for
discussion.
you.
Yeah, you have a
Odor.
trade. Oh,
Why is
Odor.
Odor on the team?
No, Odor is actually a
Okay. Ruben Odor is an 84 career WRC plus. He had 230 home run seasons, what feels like 3 decades ago. And the only reason why he's even relevant is because he was like a fantasy player. Like everyone loved him because he could steal 30 bags. That was like 2016. This guy's not good. He stuck around Baltimore last year because he was a good clubhouse guy for the young team and they liked him, yada yada. He ran into a couple home runs, but man, to be honest with you, the Padres do not need a guy like him. That's the easiest spot to upgrade. You could upgrade him from a waiver wire pickup.
Yeah, he's been not great, and not to mention an enemy of mine. I've never been a fan of his, to be honest with you. When it comes to Rougned Odor, including the years that he was good, I have had cemented in my brain for a very long time the fight with Jose Bautista.
Oh yeah.
I should say why it was started was dumb. And then he goes and does a bat flip of his own in another league in the offseason. And the Rangers needed a scapegoat. I love making fun of the Rangers. Everyone go check out Bryce Patrick, the biggest diva at Locked On, his podcast on the Rangers, and how they made like 7 errors in 1 inning, but because a guy bat flipped is when they got mad. So I've never been a fan of his. And he's been really bad. He's 3 for 31 with a lower than 100 average, 361 OPS. I saw Keith Demholer, who's a guy on Twitter who has listened to the show before and interacts with me on Twitter, bringing up Tim Lopez, Jose Iglesias, just guys in the minors who at the minimum, even if they're not top level prospects, can at least be better than him. So I think that is one area to improve for the team for sure. And to be honest with you, I'd rather see Jose Azocar out there sometimes because at least he could play defense. So yeah. I don't get the Rougned Odor stuff either. But Clay, you know what I do understand?
Seth Lugo?
I do understand him as well. But what I understand is that, what can be annoying when I'm out here, spending money and getting a free trial on my streaming services. Oh, I want to watch the Star Trek Picard. And I got a 30-day free trial. Well, I do that. And you know what happens? I forget to cancel it. It's the worst. And this is for all sorts of things. Maybe it be DC Comics. I got a free trial for that. I might keep that, but who knows? Maybe I won't want to, and I don't want to forget. Well, you know what can help you with that, my friend? The subscriptions that you forgot about. Rocket Money. That's right, guys. Every time you do those try it for 30-day things, you're always worried you'll forget. Well, Rocket Money lets you know, and it helps remove all those unwanted subscriptions. It's really helpful, guys. It's a personal finance app that finds and cancels all of your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about. That's right, 80%. That's pretty wild. Almost as high as Juan Soto's hard hit rate. And chances are you're probably one of them, like the Stars app, like the apps that I just mentioned. So guys, Rocket Money can go help you out. Over 3 million people have used it, saving the average person up to $720 a year. Stuff adds up, man. It really does. So stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. It's rocketmoney.com/lockedonmlb. Go check it out. Clay.
That sounded personal. Like
what?
It sounded like you've had a personal experience with unwanted subscriptions that you had to get off your chest.
I mean, maybe. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe. I'm not going to throw it out. I'm not going to confirm, you know what I mean? But maybe I'm a little there's some tension here. But let me tell you, Clay, as we kind of wind this out, because we are running out of time to a degree. This series overall for the Pods, again, really it was just to kind of put a ribbon on it. It was just annoying the way that they lost the last game. I would have been much more comfortable if they had lost by 5, to be perfectly honest with you, instead of it being coming down to the last second. But that unfortunately didn't happen. And now they're getting ready to face the Dodgers, but it should be brought up. I mean, there was some good offense in the game. We just talked about Soto, and Manny Machado is hopefully going to get things going. Xander Bogaerts very, very funny enough, we didn't talk about this. Soto has a base running blunder in this third game. So while he did make up for it later, that ended up taking away the hit for Xander Bogaerts. And I'm just checking really quickly. If that ended up costing him his streak, I don't think it did, because I think it's still his on base streak. I think that still would count as an on base for Xander Bogaerts, right?
Oh, for Bogaerts, yes, it will.
I think it was still low, but he goes 0 for 5 in this game. Would have gone 1 for 5 if not for the Juan Soto thing. So if that costs Xander Bogaerts, I am going to be very, very upset, but at least he made up for it. But Clay, before we kind of wind down, what were your kind of last takeaways from this as an outsider, as a Reds fan, about the Reds or the Padres?
Well, the Padres outscored the Reds 16-6 on the series. They looked like the much better team. Seth Lugo looked great. You know, he actually has according to Savant, he has the best curveball spin in the entire MLB. And he uses that more than he ever has in his career, up to 37% of the time. So I like what Seth Lugo's bringing. I'm glad to see Honeywell's finally pitching after 37 years of being a prospect and injuries and whatnot. It's awesome to see him on the mound. He's had a really difficult career. Overall, I think the Padres are fine. I think that they will make some fringe moves, you know, stuff on the edges, but the core of this lineup is legit. And the Dodgers have taken a step back. We know what the Rockies are. The Diamondbacks are not there yet. Like, they're fun, they're exciting, they're young, they're inexperienced. There's a really good chance that this could be the Padres' year to take the division. And I really say that as an outsider with no dog in the fight. I don't think the Dodgers are what they have been. They have nothing at shortstop right now, and they're relying on young players more than ever. So the Padres, to me, if you can just catch lightning in a bottle in the playoffs, I think that it's a very dangerous team. And I mean, we just look at their track record. Look at the back of their baseball cards. This team is legit, and they're deep. They just need to make a little bit of the lineup's deep. The depth of the roster can be improved. And I think that, you know, AJ Preller is going to be willing to do that, and I think he will.
Oh, yeah.
They still have enough talent in the minors to make moves too.
Yeah, they've got some stuff. I brought up those potential replacement names for Odor. Even if it's just like you said, on the edges, just improving those really bad players and just at least replacing them. I know Nabil Crismatt has struggled for this team. He's a guy out of the pen. We didn't really see him as much as of late. You know, he's struggled. You saw Luis Garcia struggle. He's the one that gave up what ended up being the game-winning hit in Tuesday's game. Happens. They can improve that, but I'm also with you. Honeywell's one of the players that I've been most rooting for, given how difficult of a career he's had. And Lugo, I did not know it was the highest spin of any curveball in Major League Baseball, but it does track. And one thing that has been interesting is throughout the starts, his velocity has gone down a little bit on some of his starts compared to what he was in the bullpen, but the spin rate has gone up for a lot of things. So it seems like he's really trying to change himself into a starter. And while he's no, shut down beast like apparently Graham Ashcraft or like the other people in the Padres rotation, he's been solid. I mean, a 3.2 ERA. I mean, come on, that's great. And I think he's going to have some games where he gets lit up. He did give up that first pitch home run to hold on, I'm blanking on his name. Who's the one that hit the home run? Hold on.
Spencer Steer hit a home
Spencer
run.
Steer. There we go. Spencer Steer hit that I think it was on the first pitch. So he can give up some bombs, but overall, it's that type of stuff for a Padres team that reportedly back end of the rotation was going to be a problem. They've been really good, and it's really exciting stuff, and hopefully it continues. But Clay, it has been a blast talking to you, giving your perspective on the Padres and the Reds. I know you're such a diehard fan of the Reds through thick and thin. But before we get out of here, what would you like to plug, whatever it may be on the side, because I know you do great work.
Just Fantasy podcast. You can find that on YouTube, Twitter, all over the place. We do 2 shows a week there, and then just baseball is just where all of my work is. You probably don't want to follow me on Twitter. It's very Reds focused, but make sure to drop a like on this video and make sure to comment and tell Javi how much you like his bobblehead.
And don't forget Pac-Man, man. You can't forget the Pac-Man in honor of Michael Waka. But yeah, Clay, it's been a blast. Glad to finally have you on the show. Everybody, remember, Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast from, Locked On Padres and Just Fantasy. Follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, or at LO_Padres. I will break my hibernation of my personal account from tweeting very shortly. Don't worry, folks. But until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.